It is 7:20 yesterday. Don't look now, but the House of Representatives passed a budget with bipartisan support. 169 Republicans and 163 Democrats voted for the bill. It now goes to the Senate. Chris Edwards from the Cato Institute, Director of Tax Policy Studies, joins us to talk about this budget. Good morning, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What are your thoughts on this budget?
I think it was a total Republican cave-in. They agreed to a giant spending hike this year, $45 billion of additional spending this year in return for higher aviation ticket taxes and promises of spending restraint a decade from now in the future. You know, half of the supposed savings from this plan come in the years 2022 and 23. So we got a big spending hike this year and the promise that they're going to trim spending a decade from now. It's nuts. I think Paul Ryan gave away the store. I think Republicans got snookered. It's a really bad deal.
What happened? I thought Paul Ryan was a darling of the right.
I think that the Republican leadership strategy is they want to clear the decks of budget battles just so they can focus on fighting Obamacare over the next year. So I think there was top-down commands for Paul Ryan to, just get anything done to get it out of the way. But I think it's
so
really
wait. You're saying that balancing the budget and getting spending cuts and all the things they get elected on is second to trying to defund and to repeal Obamacare?
The thing is that Republicans can walk and chew gum at the same time. They can criticize Obamacare, and they should. They should try to repeal Obamacare, but they should also be for spending restraint and tax reform. That's why conservative voters come out to the polls and vote for them. And I fear here that people who believe in smaller government are just going to sit at home next fall, and they're not going to vote because they're so disgusted with the party that is supposed to represent their interests in Congress.
Chris Edwards, is it a situation where you're letting perfect get in the way? You're never going to get a perfect bill because you actually...
No, but this is not. This bill could have been written by the Democrats alone. There's nothing conservative in it. They got a big spending hike and you got a tax hike. Well, where's the small government conservative stuff in here? There was none, and I'm astounded actually. I really, the $45 billion spending hike this year. I thought Republicans would have maybe given the Democrats, say, $10 billion of a spending hike. At $45 billion, that's big money even for Washington.
So are you ready to ouster Boehner, and you ready to call Paul Ryan a liberal? I don't understand how could these people who were champions of the right all of a sudden cave? I mean, they were going to bring down the government a few months ago. How did they cave? What happened?
My job. I focus on the policy, and I think this is terrible policy. But my sense of the politics, I don't think the Republican House hasn't had fiscally conservative leadership in years. I don't think Boehner and his sidekick Cantor are very good leaders. They're certainly not small government conservatives. They just want to go along and get along. They want to raise money and they want to win elections, but they're not interested in shrinking the government. That's been a problem for a long time, and it's really sad because what they've done with the deal they agreed to yesterday is they've scrapped their biggest achievement in recent years, which was the 2011 Budget Control Act and sequester that actually was providing some restraint. They've scrapped it with this deal essentially, and I think that's really sad.
Okay, but these were the people who agreed to sequester. Which was across-the-board cuts, and now they haven't. So, were they fiscally conservative, small government Republicans when they passed sequester?
I think that they constantly are sticking their fingers in the wind and changing direction depending on what their pollsters and their political experts are telling them, which is sad. They're supposed to be a party of principle that believes in smaller government, and I think and many of them are. I think that 50 or 60 Republicans in the House, good for them, voted against this. But I think this is what the Republican leaders here are doing is a losing strategy because I think conservative voters are going to stay home with the polls next fall. probably, if because they're disgusted that they're not getting any leadership. I mean, the Republicans are supposed to be the opposition party. They're supposed to be opposing the big government spending of President Obama and the Democrats, and here they're joining in the big government spending with Democrats. It's crazy.
It sounds to me, Chris Edwards from the Cato Institute, that this grand bargain they were talking about, where there was going to be real entitlement reform, would you have been more happier with a grand bargain where there was entitlement reform?
Oh, that's absolutely. I would have taken a little bit more spending in the short run for some serious entitlement reform, like Paul Ryan, to his credit, has been talking about for many years. And that's one of the mysteries of this deal, is Paul Ryan got none of the entitlement reform that he's been talking himself about for years, which makes it the deal even more bizarre. So I don't understand why they went ahead with this deal. The deal could have been written by Democrats themselves. They didn't even need any Republican input, frankly, given what they got. They got more spending. They got higher taxes. That doesn't sound very Republican.
So with this sequester, going back to this sequester, they had to go with this sequester because Boehner and Obama sat down and tried every which way to get this sort of grand bargain. You're telling me that if they would have taken that grand bargain then, that's a better deal than they agreed to now?
Yeah, the sequester. I mean, the Republicans going into this deal in the last few weeks had every advantage because the current law of the country was this lower spending level, and the sequester was partly President Obama's idea. So Republicans had a big rhetorical and legal sort of and strategic advantage going into this, which is why it is bizarre that they gave away the store here. I really don't understand it, other than to believe that they just wanted to clear the decks of this budget fighting so they can focus on criticizing Obamacare.
Let me just make sure I understand this correctly. Chris Edwards, Cato Institute Director of Tax Policy Studies. You thought sequester was pretty good, all things considered. And you also said that it was kind of President Obama's idea. So there you're kind of praising President Obama, criticizing Republicans. The reason why President Obama agreed to sequester back in 2011 was because we had the big Tea Party election in 2010. Right, but you said it was his idea.
Obama had to give on something. So he gave, he agreed to the Budget Control Act and sequester. So it was a big Republican achievement. With the deal yesterday, Republicans are essentially scrapping their only big fiscal achievement in recent years.
It's interesting times we live in, Chris Edwards, no?
It's unfortunate and sad times. And, everyone keeps forgetting we've still got a massive federal government debt of $17 trillion. We're still running annual deficits of $700 billion. All that debt and deficits is being pushed on to people in the future, a younger generation. So it's really taxpayers in the younger generation that are really getting the shaft from this inside Washington spending stuff.
So does this pass the Senate?
Sadly, it looked like it probably will. The vote in the House yesterday seemed to be pretty big. There'll be resistance in the Senate, but unfortunately, it will probably pass.
So where do the conservatives go now?
I think in the long run, they, it's not for me to tell them what they should do with their party, but I don't think they're getting very good leadership in the House. They're certainly not getting conservative or small government leadership in the House, and they have to think about changing leaders, frankly, at some point.
That is Chris Edwards, Cato Institute Director of Tax Policy Studies. Chris, Merry Christmas. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
7:30 here, Big 550.